There's a feeling I get watching A New Hope of just how small our heroes really are. Sabotaging the tractor beam, breaking out of cell 2187, or standing on the floor of the bridge. As a kid, the scale of this station consumed my imagination, but the classic toys never captured that vastness. Part 1 was the foundation. Part 2 is the nervous system. Today, we're reconstructing the Death Star the way it should have been experienced. Before I touch a printer, I go back to the cutting mat. I always start with masking tape to map out the footprint in real space. Part 1 had a linear path, but for Part 2, the station needs to expand. This is where the toyetic challenge begins. In the film, these areas are vast, but as a playset, they have to be condensed, so I'm using the tape to find that balance, keeping the zones recognizable without making the footprint impossible to manage. I'm also planning the layout specifically so I can shoot from multiple angles. I'm adjusting the placement of the panels to ensure the camera has clear sight lines while keeping the play access open. Mapping out this way ensures that the figures actually fit in the space, catching the design flaws before they become multi-day reprints. Now it's time to move on from the tape of the cutting mat to the digital build in TinkerCAD. In the software, I'm not just designing environmental panels, I'm engineering a cohesive system. Since this is modular, every new piece has to fit perfectly with the architecture from Part 1. I'll be reusing many components I've already designed, reconfiguring them from these new zones while creating entirely new pieces to fill the gap. I'm designing everything at the playset scale, then breaking the files down into segments I can assemble into these larger structures. Let's start with the mission's biggest gamble, sabotaging the tractor beam. After 30 hours of printing, with 3 bamboo 3D printers running simultaneously, the power generator trench was finally ready. From a design standpoint, this had to lock into the existing floors. Instead of starting from scratch, I reused the modular platforms from Part 1's playsets as a foundation, building the generator, the entrance, and the walkway on top of what was already there. At the center is the power generator itself. I designed 8 unique control panels for the core. Print tolerances aren't always exact, so I made these panels removable, so that way I can adjust or replace them without reprinting the entire unit. And at one point I considered using printed stickers like the original Kenner playsets, but this is meant to be a modern update to that classic design language, so I opted for fully 3D modeled physical tech details instead. I also added a circular base with a white dial pattern. It's a bit of a toyetic shorthand with bold shapes and a defined space for the figure to stand. Inside there's a housing for an LED with a translucent top, giving the core a pulse of energy. For the entrance, I leaned into the classic Imperial design language, light panels framing the doorway and a console embedded directly into the wall. To keep it modular, the doorway is a separate faceplate connected by a dovetail joint. It's secure, but swappable if I need to change the look for a different scene. I used a reflective silver filament here to help the tech details catch the light. And I added recessed grooves into the surface to give the panels more depth and structure. My first version of the walkway was too short. It didn't have the right presence, so I went back, extended the bridge, and added Imperial-style lighting detail along the surface. It needed to feel exposed. No railings, no protection, just a narrow path leading into the abyss. As a kid, I didn't fully grasp the weight of this scene, but today I see it as the moment the movie gave us our real insight into the Jedi. Not through loud action, but through quiet restraint. Obi-Wan moves with total serene precision. No panic, no hesitation, just absolute focus as he quietly disables the station's grip. That exact feeling of tense, isolated control is what I wanted to capture in this build. From the industrial openness of the trench, we move into the claustrophobia of Detention Block AA-23. At the end of the corridor sits Cell 2187. These are compact, windowless spaces designed for one thing: total Imperial control. To keep the build cohesive, I maintained the hexagonal geometry I established in Part 1. I didn't want this to feel like a separate room. I treated it as a direct extension of the corridor system, using the same cylinders to ensure the transition is seamless and the walls lock perfectly into place. However, I did move the needle on the design. I thickened the wall structure here, adding deeper recesses and heavier framing to give the section a sense of weight and reinforced security. Inside the cell, the focus is on minimal harshness. I designed the interior with grey filament and a fixed metallic bunk built directly into the rear wall. It's cramped and dark, creating sensory deprivation. From a toyetic perspective, I designed a heavy sliding blast door that could be opened via a built-on tab. It adds a necessary layer of interaction, but more importantly, it helps frame the shot when the door is closed. Just like the previous corridors, the roof is fully removable. This is essential for a space this tight, because it allows me to adjust the overhead lighting to mimic that harsh, cold glow of an Imperial interrogation. This part of the station is more than mere containment. It's the flashpoint where the narrative shifts. This is the setting where the interrogation droid meets its match, where a farm boy disguised in scavenged armor discovers the princess, and where a quiet rescue mission erupts into a frantic fight for survival. It marks the definitive evolution of the station from a cold prison into an active battlefield. This is the droid maintenance alcove. While they didn't make the final cut on the film, they do appear in the original production sketches as small recessed bays used for charging and diagnostics. I filled the space with a diagnostic table and metal scrap to give that heavy-duty workshop feel. To manage the salvage floor, the Empire needs more than just mouse droids, they need muscle. Meet MST-1, or as the maintenance crew call it, the Scrap Walker. I designed this custom rig to be the pickup truck of the Death Star. From a design standpoint, I wanted to pay tribute to the classic Kenner mini-rig line, specifically the Cap 2 Captivator. You can see that influence in the forward-facing grabber arms and the industrial hull. But because this droid has to navigate the uneven, dangerous terrain of the salvage bays, I swapped the standard treads for a quad-legged system inspired by the AT-AT. The entire rig is controlled by a dedicated black astromech unit, plugged right into the chassis to handle the walking physics, the dual claw arms, and the roller system. The bronze salvage bed is filled with metallic scrap I've 3D printed to give the bay a lived-in and overworked feel. The Scrap Walker is a specialized tool for an unforgiving environment, exactly the kind of unseen tech that makes the Death Star feel like a functioning machine. To close out this phase of the station, I wanted to expand way beyond what Kenner ever offered and tackle the ultimate command center, the Death Star Bridge. I focused the design on the core elements that define this space. First, the main view screen, which is built around a removable faceplate for cinematic flexibility. Behind it, I engineered a sliding panel system where custom retro-style graphics can drop into the slot at the top. but I made the slot wide enough to hold a smartphone too, allowing me to slide a screen in and run a fully animated space sequence directly into the set. The curved tactical consoles build on the geometry from Part 1. I shifted them to a darker color palette to match the ominous tone of the deck. When dealing with tiny detailing, 3D prints don't always resolve perfectly, so to fix that I used Posca paint pens to make the controls pop. Of course, an Imperial command deck is worthless without someone to command it. Kenner famously never made a Gran Moff Tarkin action figure in the original 1970s line. The only way to get him in that authentic vintage aesthetic was through a modern retro re-release of the Escape from Death Star board game. He's been sitting in my collection for years, but this project finally gave me a reason to crack the pack open. In the film, Tarkin commands the room from the center of the bridge, flanked by his officers looking out into the void. But the real trick to this build comes down to maximizing the modular system. Instead of spending days printing an entirely new room from scratch, I engineered the ultimate structural pivot. The panels and platforms on the tractor beam set literally transform, reconfiguring directly into the walls and layout of the bridge. Because the entire system remains completely modular, these exact components can be pulled apart, re-indexed and rebuilt, proving that this isn't just a static display piece, it's the ultimate evolution of a classic playset. With these new sections connected, the scale is starting to become clear. I'm no longer contained to the security checkpoint, the prison corridor, or the working trash compactor from Part 1. This has expanded into a living, breathing station. From the high-stakes sabotage of the tractor beam to the tactical command of the bridge, I've curated the nervous system of the Death Star. But even at this size, I'm still not finished. There's still the Imperial briefing room to design, the fateful duel between Vader and Obi-Wan to stage, and one last desperate leap across the chasm to bring this sequence to its conclusion. This is Part 2. In the next video, we finish the mission. If you're enjoying the build, hit like, subscribe, and smash that hype button. And let me know in the comments, what legendary Star Wars moment should I build next? And as always, live long and play on.